In a galaxy far from Earth, a powerful alien empire ruled over countless planets. Their technology was advanced, and their armies were vast. Among these aliens, a notorious faction had made a name for itself by conquering weaker civilizations. They were feared throughout the galaxy, but their latest target was something they did not expect: a single human soldier. Captain Jake Tanner was not an ordinary man. He was a highly trained soldier, known for his unmatched combat skills and sharp instincts. He had survived battles that would make even the bravest warriors tremble. But today he faced his greatest challenge yet. News spread quickly through the galaxy. The alien empire, frustrated by Tanner's defiance, decided to put a price on his head. They announced a bounty for anyone who could capture or kill him. 500,000 mercenaries from all corners of the universe answered the call. These mercenaries were ruthless and well-equipped, ready to hunt Tanner down and claim their reward. In a hidden base on a distant planet, Tanner received the news. He was alone, but he felt a fire ignite within him. He looked out over the rocky landscape, feeling the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. They thought they could crush him easily. They did not know that he was not afraid of their numbers. With a deep breath, Tanner began to plan. He needed to outsmart the mercenaries, using their own strengths against them. He gathered supplies and set up defenses around his base. Tanner knew he could not rely on brute force alone. Instead, he would use his intelligence and experience to stay one step ahead of the enemy. As the mercenaries prepared for their hunt, the alien leaders laughed at the idea of a single human soldier standing in their way. They underestimated Tanner, believing he would be an easy target. Little did they know that Tanner had faced overwhelming odds before and had always found a way to survive. Tanner spent days studying the mercenaries. He learned their tactics, their strengths, and their weaknesses. He noted that they were confident, perhaps too confident. Their arrogance would be their downfall. While they were busy preparing for a grand assault, Tanner was quietly plotting his counterattack. The first wave of mercenaries arrived quickly. They came in ships landing near Tanner's base. Armed and ready, they spread out in search of their prey. Tanner watched from the shadows, heart pounding. He could hear their voices, full of excitement and eagerness. They believed they were about to claim a simple victory. As the mercenaries advanced, Tanner set his plan into motion. He had laid traps throughout the area, knowing exactly where to strike. When the first group of mercenaries stepped into his carefully crafted ambush, they found themselves caught off guard. Tanner emerged from the shadows, swift and silent. With skill and precision, he fought back. He took down one mercenary after another, using their own weapons against them. The shock on their faces was priceless. They had come expecting an easy kill, but instead they were met with fierce resistance. Tanner's determination fueled his strength, and he became a whirlwind of movement, dodging attacks and striking back with deadly accuracy. The sound of battle echoed across the landscape. Tanner moved like a ghost, slipping in and out of sight, always one step ahead. He was not just fighting for his life. He was fighting for humanity's pride. Each mercenary he took down sent a message. Humans were not to be underestimated. As the dust settled, the first wave of mercenaries lay defeated at his feet. Tanner stood tall, breathless, but victorious. The news of his triumph quickly spread, reaching the far corners of the galaxy. Humans everywhere felt a spark of hope. If one soldier could defy the odds, perhaps they could too. But Tanner knew this was just the beginning. The mercenaries would regroup and they would come again. The real challenge was yet to come, and he needed to be ready. With a fierce determination in his heart, he prepared for the battles ahead, knowing that the fight for humanity's future had only just begun. After his surprising victory against the first wave of mercenaries, Captain Jake Tanner felt a rush of adrenaline. He knew this triumph was just a small win in a much larger battle. The alien empire was not going to give up easily. They had sent 500,000 mercenaries after him, and he was only one man. Tanner realized he had to prepare for what was coming next. Back at his hidden base, Tanner took a moment to collect his thoughts. He knew he needed to act quickly. The news of his first victory would not only make the mercenaries angry, but also make them more determined to catch him. He needed a solid plan and allies to help him in this fight. Tanner began by gathering all the supplies he had. He had limited resources, but he was resourceful. He scavenged through old crates and found weapons, food, and tools. He set up a command center in his base, using maps and holographic displays to keep track of the mercenaries' movements. He would use every bit of information to his advantage. As Tanner worked, he realized he could not do this alone. He needed allies, other humans who were brave enough to stand with him. He sent out messages through old communication devices, hoping to reach anyone who might be willing to fight. His message was clear: join me in the fight against the mercenaries. Together, we can protect our planet. Days passed, and Tanner's calls were answered. A small group of humans inspired by his bravery arrived at his base. Each of them brought unique skills. Some were former soldiers, others were engineers, and a few were skilled in hand-to-hand combat. Together, they formed a new team ready to stand against the mercenaries. Tanner welcomed them with open arms. He explained his plan, emphasizing the importance of strategy and teamwork. He knew that facing 500,000 mercenaries required more than just fighting. They had to outsmart their enemies. With his team assembled, Tanner began training them. They practiced combat drills and honed their skills. Tanner taught them how to set traps and use the environment to their advantage. He showed them how to fight with stealth and precision. The group bonded over their training, sharing stories and building trust. They understood they were all in this together. As they trained, Tanner learned about the mercenaries' weaknesses. His new ally, a former mercenary named Zara, provided valuable information. She explained that the mercenaries were not as united as they seemed. There were factions within their ranks, each with its own leaders and agendas. Some were motivated by greed, while others sought revenge. This division could be exploited. Tanner listened carefully. He realized they could use these rivalries to their advantage. If they could create doubt among the mercenaries, it might weaken their resolve. With this new strategy, Tanner felt more hopeful. Weeks passed as Tanner and his team prepared for battle. They fortified their base, setting traps and creating hidden pathways for escape. They gathered weapons and supplies, making sure they were ready for the next wave of attacks. Tanner worked tirelessly, knowing that every moment counted. Finally, the day of the next assault arrived. Tanner and his team were ready. They stood together, their hearts racing with anticipation. Tanner looked at each of them, seeing the determination in their eyes. He felt a sense of pride. These were not just fighters. They were friends, united for a common cause. As the first mercenary ships appeared in the sky, Tanner's pulse quickened. He knew this would be a crucial test of their training and preparation. The mercenaries had regrouped and were determined to crush him once and for all. But Tanner was ready. He had faith in his team and their ability to face this challenge. With a deep breath, Tanner took his position. He knew that together they could defy the odds once more. The battle for survival had begun, and he was prepared to fight with everything he had. Tanner's resolve was unbreakable, and he was determined to protect his people against all odds. The battle had begun, and Captain Jake Tanner stood ready with his team. They had trained hard and prepared for the mercenaries' attack, but they knew that victory was not guaranteed. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders, and every decision counted. As the first wave of mercenaries descended from their ships, Tanner and his team took their positions around the base. The sky darkened with the shadows of the incoming ships, and a sense of tension filled the air. Tanner felt his heart race, but he pushed the fear aside. This was their chance to show the mercenaries that they were not alone and that humanity would fight back. The mercenaries landed and began to spread out, searching for Tanner. They were confident and arrogant, believing they would easily capture the human soldier. But Tanner had a plan. He signaled his team and they activated their traps. Explosions erupted in strategic locations, catching the mercenaries off guard. Chaos ensued as Tanner's team launched their counterattack. Fighting alongside his allies, Tanner moved with purpose. He fought with fierce determination, remembering that this was not just about survival, it was about defying the odds. His allies were equally brave, taking down mercenaries with skill and teamwork. They worked as one, creating a rhythm of attacks and defenses. But in the heat of battle, tensions began to rise. Zara, the former mercenary who had joined Tanner's team, had a complicated past. Some of the other team members eyed her with suspicion. They questioned whether they could fully trust someone who had once fought for the enemy. Zara noticed their unease and tried to prove herself, but doubts lingered. One day, after a particularly intense training session, the group gathered to discuss their strategy. As Tanner laid out their next moves, an argument broke out. Some team members felt that they should eliminate Zara from their ranks. They believed her knowledge of the mercenaries was not worth the risk of betrayal. Others defended her, arguing that her insights could save lives. Tanner stepped in, sensing the rising conflict. "Listen," he said firmly. "Zara is one of us now. She has fought beside us and shared valuable information. If we start doubting each other, we will lose this fight before it even begins." His words brought a moment of silence. The team members looked at each other, weighing Tanner's words. Zara stood to the side, her expression a mix of determination and hurt. She had wanted to be accepted, to prove she was on the right side now. Tanner's defense of her gave her hope. After a long pause, one of the soldiers, Ben, finally spoke up. "I think we need to put our differences aside. We have a common enemy out there, and if we don't work together, we'll all be dead. I trust Zara's knowledge, we should all trust her." Slowly, the team began to nod in agreement. Tanner could see the shift in the group's mood. They were starting to realize that they needed to unite if they wanted to survive. Zara smiled faintly, grateful for the acceptance, but she knew she had to prove herself in the upcoming battle. As the days passed, tensions eased, and the team grew stronger together. They shared stories, fears, and hopes. They became more than just allies, they became a family united by a common purpose. Tanner felt proud of what they had built. He could see the determination in their eyes, a fire that matched his own. When the next attack came, Tanner and his team were ready. This time they fought not just for survival, but for each other. The mercenaries, confident in their numbers, underestimated the strength of Tanner's team. As the battle raged on, the bonds forged in the heat of conflict fueled their courage. Tanner's team fought fiercely, using Zara's insights to exploit the mercenaries' weaknesses. The once arrogant mercenaries found themselves struggling against the united front of humans. One by one, they fell to Tanner's team, who worked seamlessly together. In that moment, Tanner realized that their unity was their greatest strength. They had faced conflicts within their group, but they had emerged stronger. Each victory brought them closer, and together they began to turn the tide against the mercenaries. With every fallen enemy, the humans gained confidence. They were not just fighting for themselves, they were fighting for each other and for the hope of humanity. As the battle continued, Tanner knew that they had a chance to defeat the mercenaries and show the galaxy that humans could stand up against any threat, even against overwhelming odds. The air was thick with tension as Captain Jake Tanner and his team prepared for the final showdown against the mercenaries. After weeks of fighting and growing stronger together, they were ready to face the enemy that had tried to crush them. The last battle would determine the fate of their planet, and they knew they had to give it everything they had. Tanner stood on a rocky outcrop overlooking the battlefield. He could see the mercenary ships hovering in the sky, their dark silhouettes blocking out the sun. There were more ships than he had ever seen, and his heart raced with a mix of fear and determination. He turned to his team, who were gathered around him, their faces set with resolve. "We've come this far," Tanner said, his voice steady. "We've trained hard and we've fought together. We know their weaknesses, and we will use that to our advantage. Today we fight for our freedom and for each other. Remember, we are not just one soldier, we are a team." The group nodded, their spirits lifted by Tanner's words. They each took a moment to reflect on what they were fighting for: family, friends, and the chance to protect their home. Tanner felt a surge of pride for his team. They had come so far together, and now they would face their greatest challenge. As the mercenaries began to land, Tanner signaled to his team to take their positions. They had set traps and prepared the terrain to help them in the fight. Tanner watched as the enemy troops disembarked, a sea of alien mercenaries moving with confidence. They had come expecting an easy victory, but Tanner was determined to show them that humans would not back down. The battle began with a deafening roar. Tanner's team launched their first wave of attacks using surprise to catch the mercenaries off guard. Explosions erupted as Tanner's team fought fiercely, taking out enemies with precision. Tanner led the charge, his heart pounding as he pushed forward. But the mercenaries quickly regrouped. They retaliated with overwhelming force, and Tanner could see the tide beginning to shift. The enemy fought back hard, and soon the battlefield was filled with chaos. The sounds of weapons clashing and screams of the fallen echoed in the air. Tanner and Zara fought side by side, using their training to stay one step ahead. They moved fluidly, covering each other's backs as they fought through the mercenary ranks. Zara's knowledge of their tactics proved invaluable, helping them anticipate the enemy's moves. But even with their skill, the numbers of mercenaries began to wear them down. Tanner could see some of his team struggling, their energy fading. He knew they had to turn the tide quickly. Gathering his remaining strength, he shouted to his team, "We can do this! Remember what we fight for! We are stronger together!" With renewed determination, Tanner pushed forward, rallying his team to fight harder. They took cover and regrouped, creating a defensive line. They coordinated their attacks, using distractions and traps to keep the mercenaries at bay. One by one, they took down the enemy, but the battle was far from over. Just when it seemed they were gaining the upper hand, the mercenary commander appeared. He was larger than the others, with a fearsome presence. His eyes burned with rage as he ordered his troops to launch a full-scale assault on Tanner's team. Seeing the danger, Tanner felt a surge of fear but pushed it aside. He knew that he had to confront the commander to turn the tide. "Zara!" he called. "Cover me!" Without hesitation, Zara nodded and moved to provide support. Tanner charged at the commander, dodging blasts from the mercenaries. The ground shook beneath him as he approached the towering figure. With a swift movement, he engaged the commander in a fierce battle. The two clashed with intensity, exchanging blows. Tanner's determination fueled his strength as he fought with every ounce of energy he had left. The commander was powerful, but Tanner refused to give up. He could feel the weight of his team's hopes resting on his shoulders. As the battle raged around them, Tanner found an opening. With one final push, he struck the commander with a powerful blow, sending him crashing to the ground. The mercenaries, seeing their leader fall, began to falter. Seizing the moment, Tanner shouted to his team, "Now is our chance! Finish this!" With a roar of determination, Tanner's team surged forward, fighting with renewed vigor. The mercenaries, shaken by the loss of their commander, began to retreat. Victory was within reach, and Tanner felt hope rising in his heart. As the last mercenary fled, Tanner and his team erupted in cheers. They had faced overwhelming odds and emerged victorious. They were not just survivors, they were warriors who had fought for each other and their world. In that moment, they knew they had made history. The battlefield was quiet now, the chaos of battle giving way to a heavy silence. Captain Jake Tanner stood amid the wreckage of fallen mercenary ships and scattered debris, his heart still racing from the fight. Dust hung in the air, glimmering in the light of the sun as it broke through the clouds. Victory was theirs, but the cost weighed heavily on him. As Tanner looked around, he saw his team gathering together, their faces marked with exhaustion but shining with pride. They had fought hard, pushing through fear and doubt to achieve the impossible. Each member of his team had played a crucial role in their success, and Tanner felt a deep sense of gratitude for every one of them. Zara, who had once been an enemy, stood by his side. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, a mixture of relief and joy. "We did it, Jake," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "We really did it."